Okay, everybody, welcome to the first online tutorial for 2018 After Effects, Weber State University. This is our first screen recording for the semester. For those of you who are happening across this from the interwebs, sorry, I'm not that eloquent, but I will teach you a few things, just not in a quickly paced thing because this is real time, no edits, no anything. I'm here with my students. They're going to ask me questions. So if you're looking for more concise tutorials, search elsewhere. Okay, we're going to skip ahead and just go right into chapter 4 of the Adobe Classroom in a Book for After Effects CC 2017. We're working in the 2018 version because I don't think the physical books for the 2018 Classroom in a Book has shipped yet. However, my guess is the book's probably almost identical. So today we're going to deal with shape layers. With this new After Effects project open, it's unsaved. So good safe practice is to go ahead and save this initially. So I'm going to hit Command-Shift-S to bring up the Save As dialog box. Then I'm going to navigate to my external hard drive where I keep all the files for this class, Web 3300. And then if you're working through the book files and you're utilizing the folders, here's where the Lesson 4 folder is, and a nice place to save your finished project. So, Scott Halford, Chapter 4. Now click Save. Now, in this book, we are going to be working with a few different assets. Right off, here's a little note. If you have previously made an After Effects project and you're working along and you think, man, I really wish I could get this animation from this other project into this project. Well, here's the good news. If you hit Command-I, minute that After Effects open dialog box or import dialog box went to where I saved the project. So if I click on this and navigate up a folder to Lesson 4, inside the Assets folder, there are a couple of After Effects projects that have been made for us already. So you can actually, yep. So I'm just hitting Command-I, which is one of the ways we can import something into After Effects. So Command-I is this dialog box. And then I'm going to look for the Lesson 4 folder from the book files. And then inside the Assets folder, there is 2 After Effects projects that have already been created that we can reference. So I'm going to open up, I'm just going to double click on the drop.aep, and it will import that After Effects project into this After Effects project as a folder. This time for importing, I'm going to double click on the negative space in the project folder, or in the project panel. So double click there, and then I'm going to double click on the tracking.aep to import that After Effects project. We'll use these later. And then next up, for file organization inside your After Effects project, I'm going to create a folder. So to create a new folder, you can click on this icon, and then as you can see, the little flag says create new folder. So that's what that means. And then I'm going to type assets for this. Actually, the book wants us to call this audio. Now here's a little note about importing into After Effects. With this audio folder selected, if I hit Command-I, After Effects will automatically import every asset that I import in this round and put it in that audio folder because that audio folder was selected. So I'm going to select these 2 audio files, this beat and melody.aif. Click open, and there they go. They get dropped in there. If that audio folder were not selected and I hit Command-I, and import them, it'll bring them out to the root of the project panel. And then I would have to drag them up into the audio folder. I'm going to hit undo a couple of times because I don't need two versions of that. If you do accidentally import an asset into a folder and you want to get it out of the folder, the way you do that is you just click on it, drag it to the left, and then that sticks it outside the folder. Or you can drag it down into one of the other folders directly from that folder, like this. Okay. All right, so that's just a little bit about organizing your files within After Effects in the project panel. Now, next up, what we need to do is have a composition to work in. You need me to go back around anything? Okay. You just looked frustrated, so I wanted to make sure. All right, so next up, we need to create a new composition. This composition is kind of like your timeline, but it's where you build your art. You're composing a piece of fine art here. The key command for that is Command N. Okay. And if you want to teach yourself that, you can go up to File, New. Oh, actually, I don't even know how to do it from the File menu. Oh, it's the Composition menu. Okay, so there's your key command right there. Also, your icon for creating a new composition is right here. This little film strip looking thing with the 3 objects. That's your new composition button. So anything but your menus, right? So I'm going to call this one Shapes. And then in my preset, I'm going to select the HD TV 1080 24 preset. And then what that does is it automatically sets the width 1920 by 1080. You should just commit those numbers to memory. Okay, that's a very standard number that you're going to be working in quite often. Till 4K is our only option. Question? So I'll click cancel. The way to get a new composition is Command N, and that'll bring up that dialog box. Call it Shapes, Preset, 1080-24. Then you can customize this. Usually with film and video, you're going to be dealing with 23976 rather than 24 or 2997. Those are the most standard frame rates for video. And then next up, we're going to keep our resolution at full, start time code at 0, and then for our duration, we need to make this 10 seconds. Time code is measured, you kind of finish with this number of frames. So the way this is going is we have frames, seconds, minutes, and hours. So in order to set this at 10 seconds, we need to type 10, and then to round that off to seconds, you go 00. Okay, and that makes it 10 seconds. You don't need to type in all these colons and semicolons into the time code. You just type in 10, and that fills it in over here for 10 frames. Add 2 more zeros, and that makes it 10 seconds. Okay. Background color is fine as black. Everything else in here, the 3D renderer and the advanced, we'll get into that later. Eventually we will, but not right now. So click OK, and we have a new composition that's 1920 by 1080. All right, so to create a shape layer, here's our 2 tools up here. This is these are our shape tools, and then this is our pen tool right here. Take a look at the letters inside those parentheses. We got Q and G. Q will activate your shape layer. If you hit Q again, it'll cycle through the different shapes. So we have a rounded rectangle, we have an ellipse, we have a polygon, we have star, and then we have rectangle. Okay, so we'll be able to create all the shapes we need from those. Right now, while we're dealing with the shape tool, let's draw a little rectangle. Okay. As I'm drawing this rectangle, I can hold down Shift or hold down spacebar, reposition it. If I let go of the spacebar, still with my mouse button compressed, I can change the size of it. If I hold down Shift, it'll turn it into a square. If I hold down Shift and Command, it'll expand that square out from where I started drawing the rectangle. And then again, depending on how many fingers you have, I'm going to hold down spacebar for a second to reposition it again. Okay, and then holding down Shift and Command, it'll draw a square. If I let go of Shift, it'll draw that rectangle out from the center. And if I let go of Command, it'll draw it from where I originated. All right, so hopefully that all makes some sense. All right, so we have a red rectangle with a gray or almost white stroke. To change those colors, you have these nice little boxes up here. If you click on the color itself, you'll be able to select a different color. So I'm going to go here and select a bluish color. Click OK. And then I'm going to go up and I'm going to make the stroke 0. So I'm going to select next to stroke up here at the top, go all the way over here to the number 2, type in 0, and then enter, and then that takes away the stroke. If you do want to physically remove the stroke and not accidentally have a stroke, you can click on the word stroke and then click on that little red none, no stroke. Or you can turn your stroke into a gradient, a linear gradient, or a radial gradient. We'll get into that stuff later. Same thing with fill. You can make it have no fill, gradient fill, or a solid fill. Is everybody with me so far? All right, so we have a shape layer, which this is not actually, this is a geometric shape. This is a rectangle. So you can draw a rectangle with your pen tool and have it be a shape layer that's different in its properties than a rectangle layer. Okay, so they're two different things. Next thing we're going to do now that we have, actually, I do want to set that stroke color, but I'm going to change that later. I'll show you how. Now up here in this panel we have, and up next to your tools, we have this add arrow. And if I click on that little arrow, I have all these different things that I can add. So I can twist this, I can trim the path, I can repeat it, I can do pucker and bloat, I can wiggle the paths, all sorts of stuff. This same thing is located automatically down here. We can see it, this add down in our timeline. Same thing, okay? So if I don't have this contents thing twirled down, or nothing is twirled down, and I have the shape layer selected in my timeline, I can come up and add something to it here, or I can twirl this down and next to contents, add those things here. So so let's go ahead and add something. I'm going to add it from up here. I've just gotten in the habit because I just know that no matter what's here, I can add something to this shape using this. I'm going to add a twist. So we have a little bit of twist. That automatically revealed that twist property in my timeline down here. So if I twirl that down, I can add twist to it. Lots and lots and lots and lots and lots. Okay. Let me show you something. With my playhead here at the beginning of the timeline, let's just know that this is always an option. If I turn on the stopwatch next to the angle, see this diamond that just showed up, this little blue diamond? That's a keyframe. If I advance my playhead forward in time at all, to like 1 second, say, and I crank that twist up a whole bunch, if I'm cranking this up, if I hold down shift, it'll increase the rate at which that changes. That adds all this twist. But watch, if I hit my home key and go back to the beginning, where that first keyframe is, I'm going to change this to 0. And now if I hit spacebar, I can preview this just, okay, so I've just done an animation. I don't think that's in the book. Nope, it's not. Okay, so now if I click on this stopwatch again, it'll erase all those keyframes. So wherever my playhead is, and I turn off that stopwatch, that's where my shape layer is now frozen as its new twist. Okay, so what we're going to do now is we have this rectangle that's being twisted over and over and over, but it's tapering out toward the end. For those of you who have a book, I'm on page 95. And let's go up and let's change this stroke width to 20. And that added stroke to it. Another thing we're going to probably need to do is change the anchor point, because right now this is a rectangle that's twisting in on itself. Let me make sure I'm getting this right. They wanted us to put the twist at 220, so I did way more than I needed. Oh no, that's wrong. Let's just twist it a whole bunch. All right. Then in the contents of this, if I twirl down the contents and then twirl down this rectangle, we have the transform of the rectangle. And if we twirl that down farther, this is different than the transform properties of the layer. Okay, so once we create our shape, we can change the transform properties of the shape as a whole, as a layer, as an object. But if we transform the rectangle and change the anchor point, it's not doing what I mean for it to do. Hold on, let me pause the recording for a second because I'm going to make a fool of myself. All right, so what we need to do, because this is a spiral that's kind of twisting in on itself and it's getting thick in the middle and then tapering out to the end, we need to make it a spiral that goes all the way in and then stops with like equidistant spirals going all the way into the middle. And to do that, if we look at our twist settings, there's angle, which increased the twist, and then there's center. We need to change the center of that so that it's out on one end or the other. And just so you know, anytime you see these two coordinates, this is x and y. So if you look at a graph, if you go back to math and you see your graph, x-axis is the horizontal axis and the y-axis is the vertical axis. And it always goes x, y. So if I change the x, this will move where that twist is happening in the center. It'll move it to the side. So I'm just going to drag this until that spiral finishes unraveling itself right there. Okay. And as of right now, our rectangle is size 533 by 49. So it's 533 pixels wide and 49 pixels tall. That's why this is kind of finishing out right about there. That's when it's starting to bend in on itself, because that's where I'm getting to the end of that rectangle. And so what I've done is we've elongated this rectangle and stretched it out over all this space, and that's why we're not seeing the fill anymore. Okay, so if we want this spiral to be blue, we need to go up and click on the stroke color properties, and here's your eyedropper. If we want it to be the same blue as the fill, just click on your eyedropper and select the fill, and that'll give you the same one. Okay. So I need to get this. I need to get this spiral to be a little bit tighter. You can just animate. You can animate this. You just add keyframes and make it however you want. All right. Let me just click on the X value of the center again. I'm just going to hit down, 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 down until I can get that as tight as I can right before it starts to kind of bend in on itself. There, now have a nice tight spiral. Is that too big? It's too big for the screen, right? That doesn't matter. Remember first day of class, I said you can hit S to bring up your scale properties. I'm going to just hit S right now, and I'm going to scale that down, just make it a little bit smaller. I know I'm deviating from the book, but that's okay. If you're trying to create a spiral of your own, like, you're just going to have to do it the way I did it. Make a rectangle, twist it till it's the right spiral, until it just change things until it looks the way you want it to look. Okay? And sometimes it'll happen on accident. It'll really mess something up, but you'll say, hey, that's kind of cool, and then you'll embrace it, and then you'll claim yourself as like the world's most amazing designer, but it was all just an accident. Do that every day. All right.
Where you're doing all the animations?
Your timeline?
Left of that. I guess that might just all be the same. I hit S and then it brought up shape layer 1 instead.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
You didn't hit like Alt S or something, did you?
No, just S.
Oh, I'm gonna freeze my computer now. Oh, I just saved it. That's good. I accidentally just saved my project, so. Yeah, you just did something that I always try to remind myself. There's a key command that will bring up your shape path to reveal that. But if you just select the layer and hit S, that brings up the scale for the whole layer. Question?
Yeah, once you have the scale brought up, how do you get back to just where you were?
Oh, with all that other stuff?
Yeah.
You kind of have to twirl it back up and then twirl it down and then reveal the contents, and there's your twist and your rectangle. So that's where that's found. All right, so we made a twist. Good job, everybody. All right, let's create a new composition now. So Command N again, and we'll call this bolt, I guess. The same properties as before should be up. So 1920 by 1080, 24, 10 seconds long. It remembers your previous new composition settings. You just say that. So that's fine. Click OK. Now let's use the pen tool. Without hovering your mouse over the pen tool, does anybody remember what the key command to activate the pen tool is? G. Good job, everybody. So proud of you. Sorry, that sounded really patronizing. All right, so we're going to draw a lightning bolt. So I'll hit G. And because this is the first thing I'm doing in this composition, it will automatically draw a shape. Okay? If you have a layer selected in the timeline already and you start using the pen tool, it'll create a mask. That's something totally different. So luckily, there's nothing in the timeline. We're just going to start drawing a shape. So I'm going to draw this little lightning bolt. And I'm going to use vertices that are pretty geometric, really geometric, right? And right now I have this fill and this stroke. Let's make the stroke on this 0. So I'm just going to select this number and hit 0, type 0. There, now I have a bolt. And with the pen tool, I can select any of these points and kind of tweak them so that they look more like I intended. I'm a terrible artist, by the way. I'm pretty good utilitarian when it comes to After Effects, but as a designer and an artist, I'm not that great. All right, so it kind of looks like the books. Not exactly, but close enough. All right, so here's, when it comes to shape tools and these paths, there's a function of the pen tool and there's also a function of the selection tool. So if I hit V for the selection tool, because I already have one of these vertices selected, I can use the selection tool to move them around. I can select one of them at any time and I can hit delete and delete a vertex. And now that's not really looking like the books either. And at any time, if you mess up, you can then, so using the selection tool, you can select a line in between 2 points. This is with points already selected, okay? Or I can draw a box around multiple points and move multiple points at the same time. But if I want to add a point, I need to go back to the pen tool. So if I hit G for the pen tool and hover over the line, see how it adds that little plus next to it? That can add one. Also, with the pen tool, if you hold down Option or Alt, it turns into the vertex tool, which will allow you to add Bezier to that. So you can curve the points, okay? So it's kind of like drawing in Illustrator using the pen tool. All right, so I'm going to just, oops, I accidentally started making a new shape. I'm just going to go here and try to make mine look a little bit more like the books, just because I'm going to try that. Try it. All right, I'm getting off here. Getting way off. All right, here we go. I need another point here to make it more like the book. There. That's looking more like it. All right. Like I said, I'm a bad artist. All right, got a little lightning bolt. Okay, any questions about the pen tool versus the selection tool? If I hit V to grab my selection tool, click in the black area anywhere, that puts this binding box around the shape. So now I can grab this binding box and change the width and height of the shape. In order to grab a vertex again, I'd have to click on a vertex. I can click on the entire shape. Anyway, so now if I select the layer down in the timeline, I am now going to change the scale, because right now the scale of the layer is still 100% in both directions. If I double click on the layer or on the shape, it will bring up the Shapes transform box. So if I change this, it's not actually changing the width and height of the layer. I hope that makes sense. Well, once you end up with the shape that you want, then you want to start changing the transform properties of the layer itself rather than the shape. Otherwise, you might get kind of confused. You might confuse yourself as to what you're changing. Because if you're doing your animation visually where you want to like have it fly over here and then over here, and then you do it, you add your, you add a position property to your layer, and then you double click on it on accident and move the shape within the layer over here, but it doesn't animate. Okay, so that's the difference. So now if I grab the layer itself, move it over here, it does animate. Okay, so that's, but you can also, if you twirl this down to reveal its contents, shape 1, if I bring that down, the path can also be animated. So if I want to add a keyframe to the path and go in and change the shape, to have the bolt go the other direction, Now I have a bolt that's going back and forth like that. Okay. Did your mind just go, ooh, I can animate characters now?
Can you do that one more time? I must have missed something.
That was like added knowledge.
Oh.
So yeah, that's kind of above what the book is teaching you right now. All right, so let's create, oh wait, we got to do one. Let's add a property to this now. We can make this lightning bolt kind of have a perpetually changing shape. So if I go down to my little add option here and add a wiggle path, we can make that path perpetually wiggle. See, the wiggle's always moving, okay? And if I twirl down my wiggle paths properties, I can change the size of that wiggle. I can change the detail of it. I can make it a smooth wiggle, so that it looks like a gelatinous blob versus the corner, which will make it more jaggedy. I can change how many wiggles per second. So if I make this 0, all I've done is jankied up the line, and it's not going to move at all. But I can make this 0.5 per second, and then it's kind of a slow wiggle. And then this temporal phase and this spatial phase are just more, it's like if you were to put this underwater, it's like how the water would bend the light. So if you want bigger waves, it makes it, or slower waves. That's kind of, it's like telling the water how to bend the light when it comes to this temporal phase and the spatial phase. Really the only way to know what you're getting when you do these is to change settings and then hit the space bar and see what it looks like. Okay. And then after you've done it enough times, you can say, oh yes, I know, you'll have your go-to settings for this, but this isn't something I use a ton, actually. One of the best things for this I've found is if you want to create an animation that looks like it was kind of drawn by hand, what I would do is go to the wiggles per second and turn that down to 0. And then I would go into the temporal phase and the spatial phase, create a couple of keyframes, and then make those, this is getting advanced. If you're like too much information, just turn your brain off for the next minute. Then you can hold that keyframe, go in, and about maybe 4 frames later, you can change one or both of those just a little bit to change that wiggle, and then you go forward 4 more frames, change that again, and then you can like copy and paste those. There's an expression you can do to just repeat those keyframes over and over, but now I've got like a hand-drawn shape. Okay, with that like inconsistent wiggle. All right, I'm going to delete all that stuff and get back to the lesson. All right, so let's duplicate some shapes now. Let's create a new composition. What's the key command? Command N. So let's call this one, I'll call this one drip. And all those same settings are fine. All right, so let's create, the book has this little pinwheel shape. They have one that's made for us already, but I'm going to make a new one. Let's draw our own shape. What should I make? A clown?
Star.
Okay, yeah, actually, that's great. Let's make a star because there's a star tool, and I can teach you that a little bit. All right. So star, see that how that's rotating around? If I hit shift, that'll lock it to vertical. If I hold down alt, that'll expand it out. Ooh, I love the star. Okay, so this isn't updating visually very well, but if I hold down option or alt, that'll expand it out from where I started. Spacebar will allow me to reposition it. And then command will, I'm still holding down shift so that it's a uniform scale. Command will actually allow me to make the rays longer or shorter. Okay, so you don't have to have that standard star every time. So I'm going to let go of that there. Now in the polystar settings, let's twirl those down in our timeline. We have our polystar path. Let's twirl that down. And in this, you can change it to a polygon, and then you have what is the 5-pointed one? Octagon? Yeah, pentagon. That's right, like the pentagon. All right, I'm just going to undo that. You can change the number of points you have on this star. So if I increase points, it'll add more. Now we have made a sun. All right, I'm going to go down to a ninja star and then triangle. Okay, so that's how you can make a triangle. You have to make it from a star. Inner radius is this setting that I was doing with the control key. Outer radius will extend the rays out. And then you can change roundness so that you can turn it into a flower. Sorry. I don't know why I'm being silly. All right. Yay, it's a flower. All right. Stars are great. So many things you can do. And then you can add, if you want, I'm going to change this inner radius to make it a little bit bigger flower petals. Then from here you can add twist again and have it be a dancing star. Love, we are. Okay, I'm going to delete the twist. All right, so let's duplicate this. Let's just make this like a full flowery background of flowers. First of all, let me just go up here and with my selection tool, I'm going to put this flower up at the top left corner because we're going to duplicate this flower out this way, and we're going to duplicate this flower out this way. So next thing we're going to do to this polystar, next to contents, let's click on the add and then add a repeater. We're back on the book again. Let's twirl down the settings of this repeater. What this repeater is doing is making copies. So if I add more copies, I can just spread these flowers all the way across the screen. But I think because they're overlapping each other right now, probably 6 repeaters will be, or 6 copies of this flower will be adequate. Now remember, we have this one layer with one shape on it, then the shape is being repeated by the repeater, okay? So if I click on my layer is only this big, okay? But the shape is being repeated across. So that's why my binding box that's up here only shows up around the first shape. And then if we want to, though, we can change our offset so that it puts the original shape in the middle of the repeated bunch. But I'm going to leave that at 0, and I'm going to put this back up here in the corner. Now, we have additional transform properties. So what the repeater does is if we change the position to 0, then we have a bunch of flowers that are just being stacked on top of each other. If we change the X position out this way, then it starts spreading them out from each other till, oh man, that was almost lucky. That was 5. That was 6 across. It's fine. All right, now if we adjust the scale, each one of these repeated objects will take the previous version and then it'll compound each of these properties. So if I change the scale progressively, they'll get smaller and smaller as they go out. This is underneath the repeater transform properties. Same with rotation. It'll rotate the first one 12 degrees, but then the next one is 12 and an additional 12, and then this is 12, an additional 12, and then an additional 12. So the farthest out, that one's getting repeated. This one's rotation is getting compounded 5 times. So just watch how fast it spins. So if you like that sort of thing, you can keyframe that and then just have like all these spinning flowers. But I'll show you what that's doing to other stuff. All right, and then we can change the opacity. The first one's opacity, the last one's opacity, and have it gradiate out. Now, let's go back up to the shape layer again. And then under contents, let's add another repeater. And then instead, let's twirl down repeater 2. And then the transform for repeater 2, instead of having this go out wide, let's change that to 0 and then spread these out vertically. So if you repeat a repeater, you repeat everything. I don't know how to explain this. But then if you rotate this repeater, then you can do some pretty psychedelic stuff when you can do like a Wayne's World effect. So you know the thing where it's like Wayne's World, party time. You can do that with like multiple repeaters and changing the properties of them. So you can like get this. Because if I do a whole bunch of flowers, let's change this to like more copies, but then bring them closer. And then change like the end opacity. And then go up to the first repeater, turn up, make it like way more copies, but then bring this closer together. Now you got your like Wayne's World effect going on. And then just, you can like rotate these like crazy, and then you can rotate the other repeater like crazy. And you just have lots of fun stuff. Woo! Yeah, just goes nuts. What's the application for this? Well, Wayne's World, yeah. Let me just delete this second repeater. And then we've got this one. Let's make this copies, 3 copies. So we have, oh no, 4. Let's do 4 copies. Let's put the scale back to 100% for each one. And then let's do this rotation and make it 90 degrees. Then let's change the position of the repeater to 0 so that they're all on top of each other. And then go up to the transform properties of the polystar and shift the anchor point of this polystar from the center and put it off to the side a little bit. And what that does is it gives you a little array that goes like that. So let's pretend this wasn't a flower. If this were a line, then we would have a cross that we could then, once we change this position, we could have lines go away from each other. Okay. So while I'm thinking that way, yay. So this is me changing the position of the or the positioning of the shape on the layer, and it's making this happen, which also can be, you guessed it, animated. All right, let me hide this for a second. Let's make another shape. I'm going to make a rectangle. I'm going to not do it on that shape layer. I'm going to make a new shape layer. So I deselected everything. I was selecting nothing when I did that. Now if I go and add a repeater, here's a little trick to making a little fan of any size star you want. If I go to the repeater and change the transform of the repeater to 0 and 0 for the position, that puts them all on top of each other. Then as we rotate them out, they go like that. But we want them to be able to like go out from each other. So that's when you start changing the position of the shape on the layer. I'm making myself a liar here. Rectangle, position. There we go. All right, now we need to add more copies of that repeater, right? Dun, 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 dun. 6 copies, but let's say I want to do 15 copies, but I don't know how to do 15 copies and make it perfectly distributed around 360 degrees. Here's where you can do some math. If I go into the repeater and I say under rotation, what I need is 360 degrees divided by 15. You can actually put math in. That way you don't have to know it, and it just solves it for you. That's 24 degrees. Okay, and now I can now change this shape layer. Whoa, that was wrong. I can change the scale or size of the rectangle, and they all change together, which can also be animated. So that's scale, and then I can change the position so that they all move out. So let's pretend this is a star that starts here and here. I want to make it go like this and start in the middle like that, go forward, make them go way far away from each other, make them longer, go forward a little bit more, make them super short again, but make them fatter, and then keep moving them away from each other. And I've animated a little star that goes boink. And if I bring those really, really close to each other, then the animation can happen a lot faster. Cool, huh? So cute. That's not even what the book does. All right, so there is, last thing. Let's make another comp, and then this will be the last thing for this video lecture. And then you can do the last part of chapter 4 on your own, because I'm having fun. All right, Command N for new comp. Click OK, same settings. Now let's go to our rectangle tool and make a square by holding down Shift. And then I'm going to hold down spacebar to position that over the center of the comp if I can. So just a little square, that's it. And let's try to follow the book at least a little bit and make that a dark red color. Click OK. And now, one little tip here is I may or may not have placed that rectangle right in the center of the comp. So the way to make sure that I've centered up my anchor point on the square and then my square on the comp is we hold down Command Option Home will place the anchor point right in the center of the layer, which is right in the center of the square, okay? Command Option Home, or Alt, or if you're on a PC, you're going to be Control Alt Home, okay? All right, now, in order to make sure that, well, actually, we don't need to make sure that's directly in the center of the comp because we're going to be moving it all over the place. But if you wanted to make sure it was in the center of the comp, it would be Command Home, and that would put it in the middle, okay? All right, now let's use our rotation tool. Okay, so W is the key that activates your rotation. It's like in the American Tail, we're going to have a wowie. Who's seen American Tail? Okay, good. That's 3 of you have. All right. So W for rotation. I'm going to hit W, and then I'm going to hold down Shift, and I'm just going to rotate this till it snaps to 45 degrees. That's it. Hold down Shift, and it snaps at 45, 90, 180, 270. You get the drift, right? All right. So now this is where I want to now create a 45-degree checkerboard pattern throughout the background of this composition. So let's learn our next key command, and that is to duplicate a layer. Anybody want to venture a guess as to what the key command for duplicate is?
D.
Command D. So you got the letter right. Command D will duplicate that. Now we want to make sure that we position this layer so that they line up perfectly right here. And the way to do that is to go up to your tool, your top header here, turn on snapping. And if you turn on snapping, then if you click on this layer near any one of these anchor points, or not, they're not anchor points, what are they like? They're like the grab rectangles for changing the size of your layer. But if I click right here, somewhere near, see that it kind of accentuates that one corner that I grabbed near? If I move that near any other, either half point, whole point, it'll snap that there. So I'm just going to drop it right there. And now I want to change the color of this duplicated layer to something slightly lighter. And now with both of these selected, there's 2 ways you can select everything. You can hit Command A to select everything, or you can select multiple layers by holding down Shift. And we'll select more layers here in just a second. So if with both of these selected, if I hit Command D, I can now have their duplicates and move them down till it snaps there. Now I have 4 layers. If I select all 4 of those, hit Command D, I have all 4 of them. And now I can move these up, put all their duplicates right here in line. Command D, again, move them up here. Could even move them over here. Basically, you want to just kind of keep repeating this process until you have a full screen. So select these 4, Command D, drag over this way, select this bunch of them, Command D. Let's see, I only need 1 more row here. I'm just going to select these, Command D, get these 2. Nope. I'm going to hit Command Z a couple of times. Just these 2. Command D, grab these, bring them down. Now, I want, because I've got like a little bit of space here, this little black space, but I've got these 2 almost going completely off, I've got plenty of room that I could move everything down a little bit. So I'm going to hit Command A to select everything, hold down Shift, and then just down arrow a couple of times to nudge them down. Now, I bet you can't guess what I'm going to do. Now with all of these selected, I'm going to hit Command D again. Drag them all over here till they snap into place. Hit Command A, Command D. Duplicate all of these. Move them over here till they snap in place. And now I only need like this last few rows. Command D, drag those over, and I've created a checkerboard pattern.
Is there a shortcut or quick deselect everything so you're not missing stuff?
You just make sure you select negative space. That's really the only way to deselect. So you can either click on any of these non-selectable columns, or you can find an area in your composition panel that doesn't have anything in it and select there. That deselects everything.
So there's no keyboard shortcut for deselect all?
Not really. You just kind of have to deselect by selecting nothing. Now I'm just going to nudge these over a little bit to try and get a nice even thing. Oh, it's going off here. That's taking a long time to refresh. That's a lot of little layers. Question? The snapping is up here. It's something you turn on and off up here. If you don't have snapping up there, that's a good question. Which panel is that? Because that, if you go up to your window, it should just be in your tools. Yeah, I think it's just part of your tools panel, which, are you seeing all the rest of these up here?
Three after the pin, and then it says set rotation for 3D layers.
Huh.
Rotation gives me a drop down orientation or rotation.
I'll come help you in just a second. Does anybody have any questions that want to be answered on this recording? Your snap isn't working? Okay, that's stuff we can troubleshoot as a class off screen. Okay, thanks everybody. Catch you next time.